Okay, so this is the screen capture section. First thing I want to do is I want to turn the Osmo on and let it run through its calibration. While it's doing that, I will open up the DJI Mimo app. Okay, so what I've noticed connecting wirelessly, if you're in an area where there's a whole bunch of other networks, turn the Wi-Fi on your phone off and let the Mimo app find it. So I clicked on the camera icon in the corner there, and now we want to choose for wireless, we want to choose Bluetooth because that's how I'm connecting. Now I can connect the camera to the phone, but for doing the screen capture, I want to do it this way. It's telling me, it's giving me a tutorial to tell me to put my Wi-Fi base on. You have to have that. So now I have two. Lens Wizard is the Wi-Fi here in the office, and the other is the actual camera. We're going to connect through the camera. Okay, so we're going to be looking at these photos we have here on the wall. These are test prints of some models that I've worked with, and we have Shauna over here in a cowboy hat. We have Tiffany in the center, Chan, and then we have Jade down there in the center. So let's get right to this. Let's jump into this. I just want to show the purpose of showing the interface and the settings is so that the people that I've encountered that have asked me about it, they've seen video and they've seen advertisements of this Osmo Pocket on the internet, and they want to know, is it really as easy to work as they say it is? And it is. Over here, starting on the right, we have a slider that lets us slide between our different modes. And everybody is pretty much familiar with that type of a slider because a lot of the mobile phones are using that now. I know my Samsung Note 8 uses this same type of a system. So that part is very familiar. We going just above that, we have the four arrows with the dot. This is right above the red shutter button there for the video. And all that does is that recenters your gimbal. And then there's this kind of virtual joystick right here, just to the right of the histogram. And that lets me kind of move it around. And this thing's a little touchy, but I tell you, you do get used to it. So, and then right below the shutter, the red shutter button, we have the little icon that'll flip it around to go from selfie to forward facing. And we're not going to do selfie right now because I'm in a very poor lighting. So let's just jump right over to the camera settings and let's get into photo. And I just want to show how easy the interface works. Over here there's an M because it is in manual right now. If you put it in auto, obviously it would say auto. So let's go into M, and you can kind of see how the shutter, everything's very easy, very simple, very familiar, very much like a lot of mobile phones that are out there already. So right now I had it in auto, which you can see auto, my exposure is at 0, and if I go to 100, my exposure is still at 0. Or it bounces. So we're very close to 100. I do have a light here and put it back in auto. And let's see if I close the barn doors on the light, you can see the exposure change. And if you put it in 100, you'll really see the exposure change. So let's put our light right there. So I just wanted to show that part of it. That's how that works. Let's see if we go, let's put it back to auto for all intent purposes. Down here we have a stopwatch for your shutter. If you want to set it, for a different amount of seconds while you set the camera up to take a photo, mostly like of yourself or a group or something like that. And if we go above that, we have our different settings for fast follow and follow. So you can, do it slow follow. So that goes from fast follow to slow follow, and clicking on this one goes from tilted locked, FPV, and follow. So different modes. Mode pretty much for everything. And histogram, I'm going to go over here to histogram. Histogram I use most of the time. You don't have to, you can turn that off. And then if we click on the three dots down here in the bottom, okay, so let's just start off in basic. Basic kind of gives us, well, you can see there's your photo ratios, and you want to set your anti-flicker to 60, of course, if you're here in the US, and glamour effects, grid lines, all that kind of stuff. Autofocus, I think, is something that I usually keep set on autofocus in the center. And overexposure tip, if you see the zebra stripes that are around Tiffany, between Tiffany and Chan and the photos there, if I turn overexposure tips off, I like to keep that turned on. That's, some people find it annoying. So if we go over here to Pro lets us shoot RAW and JPEG, and we can shoot, of course, just JPEG or RAW and JPEG. And our photo ratio is still there, and this is why we're getting our red tint there. That puts us more at a cooler temperature. I don't know, I'm getting a red tint in here, and I think it's because of my light. I think, let's see, oh, I put incandescent, and it's actually a fluorescent light. No, it's not a fluorescent light, it's actually an LED. So anyway, if I put it on auto, I get kind of the closest to a real lighting situation there. Anyway, what else do we have down here? I think that's pretty much about it for that. So now let's just get right into the video part of this. And if we go into video, so the camera part is pretty much still the same. And here are your video settings. You know, you got your 4K over here, which is kind of, you know, it's the Ultra HD essentially. And then you have 1920 by 1080, which is your standard HD. You have your different frame rates, and I usually shoot in either 30 or 60, and I typically shoot in the 4K. Now, let me close this for a second, move this histogram because it's causing a problem. There is fine and there is super fine. And super fine is kind of blocked out right now because certain, and this is something that I found to be very interesting, certain options will be blocked out for reasons of you're on the Wi-Fi, which I just find totally ridiculous. One thing you have to know about the DJI products is they're built very fine, but as far as build quality, but sometimes there's just weird stuff that they do with the software. And I know that they have a reason for it, but I don't buy it. I mean, we live in an age where we're sending, you know, we're going to be colonizing Mars pretty soon, and we can't do certain things over Wi-Fi. So there are your video settings, resolutions. And then if we go down to this, now we have some different things. Actually, we're in the wrong spot here. Get up here. So now we see a little bit different stuff with video. We have MOV, MP4. You pick your flavor on that, whichever you like the best. D-Cinelike. I love to shoot in D-Cinelike, but there will be certain things, for example, that you will D-Cinelike will not be available through the Wi-Fi. So let's just real quick, before we go any further, I just want to point that out because this drove me nuts at first. Okay, so I want to shoot in 4K, I want to shoot in 60 frames per second, and you've seen like a color shift there when I chose that. And the reason that is because now when I go back, there is no choice even. See, the choice is gone. It was right around where the white balance was, and the anti-flicker is, you know. So let's just go back and I'll show you that again. So if I turn and go back to 30 frames per second, come back in, all of a sudden there's my color, but it has set it to normal. And that's something that I really wanted to point out. That drove me crazy. I didn't know what was going on, because if I connect directly to the phone through the little USB, port, it's always there. It doesn't matter. So it's just strange over Wi-Fi. And actually, when you connect it, put the base on, it'll tell you like on the screen of the Osmo itself. So anyway, moving on. Everything else is pretty much about the same as far as that's concerned. So let's go down to, this was a good one here. This is the 4 squares down there. This is where you can format your card, of course. You have your Wi-Fi settings, and there's the password you can see for that. And if you want to get out of it, you just tap on the home screen and it'll take you back. So now slow motion. Let's point something out on slow motion. With slow motion, if you've seen when I first turned on that, let's go back to video and then we go to slow motion. You notice that it says slow and it says 4 times zoom. And just look at the crop factor. So there is regular video, 4K. And then when we do the slow motion, which is 120 frames per second, you are now getting a major crop or zooming in effect. And you can check out the footage. The footage is very good. I love and it's in 1080. You have to know that. If you look down here in the corner, or not in the corner, but at this, and actually it won't even let me click on it, because it won't let me change it. It's 1080 4 times. But it will still let me shoot in Decinelike, which I like, because I like that Decinelike profile in this. It looks good. So anyway, that's your slow motion. Time lapse, let's get into time lapse. So time lapse is really very easy. I think it is. I think this is extremely easy to set up. A lot of cameras are getting easier as time goes by. So click on the drop down menu and we choose what interval we want. Do we want every 2 seconds, 3 seconds? I can tell you right now, every 2 seconds makes for a really nice one. Choose your duration. Now, the duration is the amount of time that you're going to be shooting. And if you go up here to the uppermost line of numbers, you'll notice as you change this, it tells you how many seconds your video is going to be. So essentially a 30-minute duration of shooting is going to give you a 30-second time lapse. Okay, so for people that are not used to doing time lapses, that's how all that works. Now, path is kind of cool, because path allows me to set where I want it to travel. So for example, say I wanted it, and I can move this histogram is in the way. I can say I want it to travel from this spot, and then I add that point. And if I want to delete it, there's no problem. You can delete it. So, you got it? And then say I want it to go to up here. And then I want it to come and then down here. And I want to do a time lapse of just say 20 minutes, which will give me a 20-second time lapse in the end. And it stitches it all together for you. Doesn't really give you a choice to save the photos that I can tell. Like with the drones, we can save the photos and do the time lapse in the unit. This, it just does it right in your phone, or actually in the Pocket Osmo, and it's available for viewing. So that's kind of how that works. I think that's kind of very simple, because you just add your points, and once you've added your points, go over here, add a second point, and then you just hit the red button and it starts shooting. And when it's doing its shooting, you do not touch it. You don't move it or anything. And it gives you some warnings, but yeah, you just let it do what it's going to do. So let me just get rid of those so I'm not in there. I got to be honest, I've never used Pano yet. I'm not a big Pano fan. It's just, it's not that I'm a big fan. I just don't get out to use pano that often. Uh, Mostly, what I like to do long exposure, and for photography, and as far as video, the hyperlapse or time lapse is a lot of fun. So I think that's pretty much it for the interface part of it. Hey, if you really, if you really want to know my thoughts and opinions on this thing, I think this thing is an awesome little gadget. Now, will it take the place of a DSLR? In some instances, yes. In some instances, it will take the place of a DSLR. You got to remember, the best camera is the camera you have on you. But the one thing you do have to remember about this little guy is it is a locked aperture. You're stuck at whatever aperture. When you go over here to your settings, you have shutter, you have ISO, but you don't have your full exposure trifecta, which would also be your aperture. So you're kind of stuck with that. I think the next version of this one that comes out will have an aperture. You'll be able to change the aperture. I've already gotten some surveys from DJI, and I've noticed that question pop up a few times in there. Would you pay a little more for a unit that had exposure? I'm sorry, had aperture adjustments. So if you see the square on the screen, it's doing the face detection thing. So that's why it keeps bouncing around. I'm making it move right now. I'm touching it with my finger, and that's just kind of how you can focus and set your exposure. And it's kind of hard to see it, but when it does that, sometimes you'll get a good lock, sometimes you'll get a bad lock. But anyway, so my thoughts and opinions on this thing is that it is a great little unit for the price. It makes a great gift for somebody that is somewhat inclined to have something like this. I wouldn't buy it for somebody that just like isn't interested in gimbals. And it's very small. The unit itself, to hold it in your hand, it is very small, but that's what makes it nice. You just got to be, you don't have to be too gentle with it. I've pounded the thing around a little bit because I'm not a gentle person when it comes to camera equipment. Anyway, if you like this video, hit like, hit subscribe, check out some of the other videos. There'll be some links here at the end. And hey, if you're interested in one of these, you can click on the link for Amazon down there in the description box. Thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great day.